April 29, 1945. A Sunday. The sky hung low and ashen. The air bit with a damp cold. The men of the U.S. 45th Infantry Division, the Thunderbirds, advanced on a sprawling complex outside Munich. They believed it was a supply depot, perhaps a factory. They had no inkling they were stepping into the heart of a century's nightmare. They found a railroad spur. On it sat a train. 39 cattle cars, silent, frozen in place. The soldiers approached. The stench reached them first, a sweet, rotting foulness that coated the throat. A lieutenant wrenched open a door and peered inside. His scream tore through the stillness. The cars were packed with death. Thousands of bodies, men, women, children, starved, broken, piled upon one another like discarded refuse, left to perish from thirst and exposure. On some, the marks of teeth, the final, desperate acts of the living trying to consume the dead. These American soldiers were hardened. They had fought through Italy, through France. They had seen combat's brutal calculus, but they had never seen this. A tough 19-year-old from Oklahoma sank into the snow and wept, his whole body shaking. Another turned and vomited. For most, however, the horror did not linger as grief. It crystallized into something else, a cold, tremoring, and murderous rage. They looked at the SS watchtowers in the distance. Their hands tightened on their rifles. In that moment, the rulebook of war burned away. The Geneva Convention was a distant, meaningless document. The only law left was retribution. This is the true story of the Dachau Liberation Reprisals. The day American soldiers snapped. The day they lined SS guards against a wall. And the day General Patton made a fateful decision. No prisoners. The breaking point. Sometimes is murder justice. The men of the 45th were not born killers. They were farm boys, mechanics, students. They were liberators. Before April 29th, they were known as professionals. They took prisoners. They treated the wounded. Dachau unmade them in an instant. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks, the commander on the ground, fought to maintain order. Keep moving. Don't look at the train, he shouted. But it was impossible to obey. There were 2,300 corpses on that train. The soldiers marched past hollow eyes and skeletal forms. Private John Lee would later say, "We were mad. A burning, righteous madness. We wanted to wipe every German off the map." They reached the camp's main gate. The SS guards remained. The commandant had fled, leaving behind a young lieutenant, Heinrich Wicker, and some 500 SS men. Wicker knew the war was lost. He intended to surrender properly. He donned his finest uniform, polished his boots, and marched out with a white flag, expecting the formal courtesies of a defeated officer. He approached the Americans. "I surrender this camp to the United States Army," he announced. An American officer looked from the clean, well-fed Nazi to the mountain of dead behind him. He spit directly into Wicker's face. The surrender was over before it began. The coal yard. As Americans entered the camp, chaos erupted. 30,000 living skeletons rushed the fences, screaming, "Americans! Americans!" But amid the cheering, a hunt was underway. A group of SS guards tried to surrender near a coal yard. They raised their hands, chanting what they believed was a magical incantation. Hitler kaput. They believed it would spare them. It did not. An American lieutenant. Historians believe it was Lieutenant Jack Bushyhead, a Native American officer, stood watching. He was trembling. He had just seen the crematorium, its ovens still warm with human ash. He looked at the healthy, arrogant SS men, then at his own men. He gave no verbal order, only a slow, deliberate gesture with his Thompson submachine gun. "Line them up." About 50 Germans were shoved against a brick wall. Panic set in. "9. Geneva Convention," one cried. A machine gunner nicknamed Birdseye mounted his .30 caliber on his tripod. The heavy click-clack of the bolt. He looked to the lieutenant. A nod. Then a sustained roar of machine gun fire. Screams swallowed by the noise. It lasted perhaps 10 seconds. When the smoke thinned, the SS men were a heap on the ground. The snow was stained black with coal dust and red with blood. Lieutenant Colonel Sparks heard the gunfire and sprinted to the scene. He saw his men firing into the twitching pile. He drew his pistol and fired into the air. "Stop! God damn it, stop!" he roared. The machine gunner turned to him, eyes empty. He wasn't remorseful. He was weeping. "Colonel," he choked out, "they deserved it. A lawless hour. This was not an isolated event." At Tower B, SS guards climbed down a ladder, hands high. American soldiers shot them off the rungs. The bodies splashed into the moat below, where GIs emptied entire magazines into the water to ensure the job was done. One GI later wrote home, "It wasn't war. It was an execution, and I didn't feel a thing." After those boxcars, they weren't human to me anymore. Nor were the Americans the only avengers. The prisoners, surging with a frail, adrenalized strength, found an SS guard hiding in a watchtower. They dragged him down. Weaponless, they used shovels, sticks, their bare hands. American soldiers stood by, smoking cigarettes. "Should we stop them?" an officer asked. A sergeant shook his head. "No, sir. Let them finish." The prisoners beat the guard to death. It was primal, savage, and to them, it was justice. In another corner of the camp, they found a capo, a prisoner who had tormented his own, and drowned him in a latrine. For 1 hour, Dachau was a place without law. The victims became judge, jury, and executioner. The U.S. Army simply turned its back. Patton's judgment. Eventually, order was restored. Sparks secured the surviving Germans, protecting them from his own troops. But the secret was not airtight. Photos existed. American soldiers standing over executed Germans. Evidence of the Coal Yard Massacre. An investigation was launched, led by Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Whitaker. His report was damning. It detailed violations of international law and recommended court-martials for the American liberators. The report traveled up the chain of command until it landed on the desk of General George S. Patton. Patton examined the photographs, the dead SS guards, and then the death train. Patton was a notorious disciplinarian, a man who would reprimand a soldier for a scuffed boot. But this was different. He summoned the investigating officer. "What is this garbage?" "Evidence of war crimes, sir." Patton slammed the report on his desk. "Va crimes. You walk into that hell, see 2,000 rotting corpses on a train, and expect my boys to follow the rulebook? The hell with that." He declared the men were overwrought, their trigger fingers nervous. Then he took decisive action. He did not sign the court-martial papers. According to accounts, he either burned the report or ordered it buried in the deepest, most secret archives, never to see light. "There will be no trial," Patton stated. The SS got exactly what they deserved. Dismissed. Supreme Commander Eisenhower, after seeing the photos from the train, concurred. The investigation was quashed. The charges vanished. The unmarked graves. Lieutenant Jack Bushyhead returned to Oklahoma and never spoke publicly of that day. He died in 1977, a silent hero carrying a heavy secret. The Dachau reprisals remain a dark, complex legacy. Neo-Nazis point to them as moral equivalents. Historians understand the distinction. This was not premeditated genocide, but a shattering human reaction to industrialized evil. When you see a trainload of dead children, does the soldier remain, or does the avenger take his place? The men of the 45th made their choice, and General Patton chose to protect them. Today, Dachau holds memorials for its 30,000 victims. There is no marker for the roughly 50 SS guards shot at the coal yard. They lie in unmarked graves, forgotten. History has rendered its verdict. They were the architects of their own hell. And on April 29, 1945, they met its wages. As for the American soldiers, they carried the memory of the death train forever. One veteran reflected, years later, "I know it was wrong to kill prisoners. But that day, in that place, it felt like the only right thing left to do." This is war's most terrible question. If you had stood before that train, and then before those guards, would you have pulled the trigger? Be honest. Let me know in the comments. And if you want to discover the story of the ghost army that fooled Hitler, click the video on screen now. Thanks for watching.